we recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
And I know that we're up against a hard out. Just one final question, since you brought it up. What would you like to know about September 11th, the official story there, Senator?
Well, start with Building 7. Again, I don't know that you can find structural engineers other than the ones that had the corrupt investigation inside NIST that would say that that thing didn't come down in any other way than a controlled demolition. I mean, you just look at that. You talk about molten steel. Again, you listen to the documentary Bravo 7. There's an awful lot of questions. You know, who ordered the removal and then destruction of all that evidence? Totally contrary to any other firefighting investigation procedures. I mean, who ordered that? Who was in charge? I think there's some basic information. Where's all the documentation from the NIST investigation? No, there are a host of questions that I want, and I will be asking, quite honestly, now that my eyes have been opened up. I've talked to former Congressman Kurt Weldon now. I will work with him to expose what he's willing to expose as well. Wow. So we may actually see hearings about this. I think so. And by the way, this was opened up when my ranking member now, when he was chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation, he did the investigation on the PGA and LIV Golf and the PIF. Part of that is we had 9/11 families coming forward and saying, we want the FBI files unredacted. We want those made available in terms of what happened. What did the FBI know had happened? So we got engaged with that on a bipartisan basis. We wanted to get those answers, those documents for the families. Again, we didn't get squat from the FBI. So hopefully now with this administration, I think President Trump should have some interest being a New Yorker himself. What actually happened in 9/11? What do we know? What is being covered up? My guess is there's an awful lot being covered up in terms of what the American government knows about 9/11. Wow, including who let the hijackers into the country, which was John Brennan, station chief in Doha. Why would he do that? And why would you let him take flight lessons? There's so many things that don't make absolutely no sense at all when you actually look at the government's own documentation. This is from Guantanamo Bay. And then to your last point, and then let's please put up the senator's X account here. Everybody follow Ron Johnson. This is bombshell stuff. But yeah, President Trump on the morning of September 11th saying there's no way those buildings came down by themselves. They're the strongest buildings in all of New York. There's no way they came down that way. This is President Trump's own words. And it matches the words of the firefighters who were in the building, many of them who've perished. So we owe them, at the very least, these guys gave their lives. We owe them the chance to get absolution here and the truth. Thank you, Senator, for fighting for those things. God bless you and Godspeed in your pursuit of the truth.
A better world also means a healthier world. And vaccination is our best chance to do this. Vaccines have saved millions of lives in the past 50 years. But right now, millions of children are still at risk. They need vaccines. So we must continue to support vaccination around the world. And today, I am pleased to pledge $290 million for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Each child should be protected. And more will come. Together with Gavi, we have the goal to vaccinate 500 million children by 2030.
We are here because we all agree that climate change is real, man-made, and it is for all of us to tackle it. The threat of climate change is existential. Year after year, you see the snow line rising even higher up the mountains. You see the melting of the glaciers. But you also see the waterline falling even lower. And even if some countries have decided to look away, the protection of our nature must continue to be at the top of our global agenda. And we are helping Central Asia's farmers to adapt to a drier climate, using technology to save water and to monitor its usage. And this is the same transition that many farmers in the European Union are also going through. Those same European farmers are now exploring innovative solutions, for instance, by using our satellites that you showed to monitor the soil, but they are also using adaptation with new genomic techniques, with climate change resisting plants. So let us join forces on innovative solutions and address the new reality of a changing climate together.
Welcome back to the SCIF. I hope you enjoyed the Nazi babushka there telling you to get your vaccine and to help climate change. All of the EU tyrannical policies right there in front of you. We're going to talk about some themes today. One of them is disclosure, and there's a lot of disclosures happening. We're going to try to stay in front of all of it, or at least report on all of it. We've had a few changes today. There was a fire and a loss of electrical power in California, hard to believe. So our guest, Pete Blaber, former Delta Force commander, we were going to delve into a lot of the military propaganda coming out to keep the war going. He's been all over it. And, you know, we have guests on recurring because the themes keep going. And we're going to talk about a lot of the themes that we're going to get into here at CDM. But Pete will be with us hopefully tomorrow. We're going to switch gears in the middle of the show here and have Ed Vidal on after the first break, and we're going to delve into the State Department with Marco Rubio. He's been on this from day one. Really insightful. Ed is down in Miami Independent. He's a immigrant from Cuba, attorney, very successful, and very knowledgeable on what's happening in Latin America. So that's going to be a big focus of CDM, also with our CDM Espanol channel. So Ed is going to be on in a minute after the break, and then Kurt Brackob in the second hour. We're going to dig into the EU. The EU is one of our major themes. The EU, in our opinion, is totally captured by the Chinese Communist Party and the globalists. You see Ursula von der Leyen, who's the head of the EU Commission. You see Macron in France. You see Merz in Germany. You see all of these people not working for their own people. Zelensky in Ukraine, and this is all of a piece, and it's an attempt for China to make them vassal states. They, in our view, they already are. They're acting just like it. By the way, we predicted this. We have an article up on CDM. In fact, I'll bring that up right now. As we warned, Europe lines up with China on tariffs, climate change, and even they want Gates to give more vaccines to your kids. So we were on this months ago that the EU would probably go with China against Trump, and that's exactly what's happening because, you know, look at it. They were milking the U.S. for as long as they could, and when that train ended with Trump coming into power, they're going back to their masters and say, okay, it's time for us to take the mask off and go after the U.S. as we've been doing, subtly now for years. So we're going to talk about a lot of these themes. It's a time for choosing. That's theme number one. We're seeing this in Georgia. We're seeing this in Florida. A lot of evidence coming out on the election fraud, on corporate fascism in Georgia, and it's a time for choosing. In the GOP, it's very clear now who is working for the people of Georgia or for the people of Florida or the people of the United States and who is not. You can see it in the state government, the local government, all the way up. It's very clear to see, and we're going to continue to post those out. Disclosure is another theme. There you saw Senator Johnson. We're going to try to get him back on. We interviewed him in the past. We're going to try to get him back on because this 9/11 disclosure thing is massive. And this is going to it's going to shake the republic to its core. And so this is something we want to dig into. We're not going to back away from anything we find. We're just going to tell the truth as we always have. We're not out to get anybody. We're just going to tell the truth as we see it. The EU tyranny is a big one. Trump says the EU is a project to destroy America. We think that's exactly right. Part of that is the Ukraine war. More coming out on that. We're going to dig into a possible peace deal this week. The China tariff issue is huge. You've got the financial class squawking right now, big time. And you've got the narrative Mockingbird media coming after Trump, which we've been on over and over, and we'll continue to be on that. And what the heck is going on in DOD? So all of these are things we're going to get into. Today is April 22nd. I'm your host, L Todd Wood. We'll have Ed Vidal on shortly and Kurt Brackob in the second hour. Here's your mission brief. The Blob doesn't want peace. Will it be announced this week? The EU gets in line with China, as good vassals should. The 9/11 falsehoods. Are we going to have disclosure, continuing disclosure? The Dan Caldwell saga. This is big in the Pentagon. We're going to dig into that because you got to know what's going on here, and we do. And then Boston is in the middle of an economic death spiral with the NGO funding cut off. That's really interesting to us. This is the cradle of liberty, and we need to get that cradle back. So we're going to work on that here at CDM and expose this everywhere we find it. We have Ed Vidal coming on right after the break. We're going to take a quick break. By the way, put cdm.press in your daily scan, morning, noon, and night. Please help us. We need traffic. It's growing. We've been heavily suppressed over the last decade, really, due to our reporting in Ukraine on the vaccines, on everything. That suppression is going away, and we need to rebuild our distribution. So everybody, do me a favor. Tell one person today about CDM. If you feel great, tell two people. Tell them to catch the show every morning. And Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern, and then the weekend shows on Sunday. But we'll be right back after this break.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive, interestingly available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our CDM.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. So how long have we been telling you about precious metals? Gold, I think, went above 3,500 an ounce today. This train is just leaving the station. What you need to realize, and by the way, you need to talk with people who've been through multiple bear markets, as I have, as our whole team has. I was there in 1994 with the massive interest rate problems, with the Russian devaluation, all of it. I've seen this before, and precious metals will protect you in these environments. We are entering a decade of uncertainty, financial, volatility, and really a restructuring of our entire economy. We don't know if we're going to be successful. What I do know is everything you have right now is going to change, and people are going to go to stores of value. So go to cdmmetals.com, fill out the form, and the team at Advisor Metals will get in touch with you. It's an easy conversation. I've said it before. We've checked their bankers. We've checked their IRA custodians. We've checked his regulatory background. He's the only one that is regulated by the Commodities and Futures Commission, and he's a patriot, and he's not a salesman. He's a coach. So give him a call and talk to Advisor Metals and protect your IRA or even just your cash assets. I'm going to bring in Ed Vidal now. Ed, thanks for coming on, man. Short notice. I appreciate it. You're the go-to guy for Latin America, at least for CDM is concerned. You write for the Miami Independent, and you were early on this Rubio stuff. I'm really impressed, and I want to tell our audience that, months ago you were saying he's going to be instrumental in reestablishing the Monroe Doctrine. Now they're talking about redoing the State Department and Rubio's right in the center of that. Tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, Marco is a very talented guy, very smart, hardworking, but he really needs to make a go of it in the public sector. He's never been a private sector attorney or anything like that. So he is working very hard to implement the Trump America First MAGA agenda, which was not always his agenda. Okay.
Well, he's been a pleasant surprise, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, he wants to succeed. He's a Cuban immigrant. He wants to be successful, and he realizes that Trump is the only way to do it. And so he has become very good. In 2023, he and Senator Kaine, from a Democrat from Virginia, co-sponsored a bill saying that the U.S. president could not withdraw from NATO without the consent of the Senate, which is kind of an anti-Trump America First, but he's come around, and he is as loyal, and he's being very effective. So what he did was his first trip down to Panama, he straightened them out. He said, look, and I saw videos of Panamanian lawyers telling their president, we have to go with the Americans. We have violated our treaty that said we would keep it neutral. We have handed it over to the Chinese. And in fact, it happened around 2017. Before that, Panama supported Taiwan.
Really?
In the UN before that. But then in 2017, China came along and bribed the then president, who's a total crook. He's been discovered. And they changed all of a sudden. They recognized mainland China, and they joined the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, a couple of years ago, I went on a trip to Hong Kong. I had never visited the Far East, and I really did some research into China. What kind of a civilization is China? Because I used to be part of the group that thought, if we open up with China, they'll come around, and the middle class will grow, and there'll be pressure to have a more pluralistic political system. That is completely wrong. China for 4,000 years has been an imperial system. They've had an emperor. The emperor has had an administrative state, mandarins, experts, and China is basically a hydraulic civilization. They made their living from 4,000 years ago. They cultivated wheat and other rough cereals in the north, in the Yellow River, and in order to do that, they had to tame the river. So they've been doing. The Tennessee Valley Authority was in the 30s. They've been doing that since 4,000 years ago. They've been taming the rivers. They've been building canals. They've been diverting. They've been controlling the floods so that they can raise, in the north, they could raise wheat. That's why they invented pasta before the Italians. And then they moved south. They use the same system. It's belt and roads. They go to the adjoining community, and they say, oh, we'll build you a dam, or we'll build you a canal, and then they incorporate that community into the Chinese Empire. And they did that on the Yellow River in the north, and then they moved south, and they did that with the Yangtze River, which is even tougher. And that's how China has been built for 4,000 years, with many ups and downs. but they were a wealthy country back in the Middle Ages, back in the Roman Empire times. They were successful. Now they've had failures. They fell behind the West after 1800, but they're trying to catch up. And what I don't like is that they're no longer looking at incorporating vassal states like, the Pearl River Delta Basin in the South, which they did 2,000 years ago. Now they're not stopping at Tibet or Xinjiang or making Laos and Cambodia vassal states. They want to make America a vassal state. I object to that. They want to make Europe a vassal state.
Well, Canada, I would say, is a vassal state.
Well, Europe is a vassal state. I'm going there in May, so I'll report back.
Good.
But then Latin America is sort of the soft underbelly of the United States. And that's why I thought that the new Trump administration would reinstitute the Monroe Doctrine. And that's what Marco Rubio has been doing. And he has been very diligent. He has the inside track to be J.D. Vance's vice president in 2028. So. If he keeps going like this, he will continue. So he's got victories in Panama. El Salvador is a complete ally. The president of El Salvador won re-election on a law and order basis. He's built this prison, but that's mostly to put in their own prison. El Salvador was one of the most violent countries in the world.
Yeah,
he took over, and he has really enforced the law. He's done what all our mayors and county commissioners need to do: enforce the law. We used to live in Houston. Houston's become a shooting gallery.
Yeah,
the judges are letting people out with no trouble. The district attorney is funded by Soros, and the people keep voting for the same thing. It's Houston, it's Chicago, San Francisco is kind of taken back, Oakland, California, even New York has a problem. So El Salvador is a law and order state. Nayib Bukele, he's from Middle Eastern immigrants. His grandparents are from the Middle East. And so he has settled down the law. I think the next step is going to be Cuba. Maybe it won't be done right away, but Cuba is falling apart, literally and emotionally, in every sense. The electricity doesn't work. There's no running water. Something like 4 to 10% of the people have left in the last 4 years. So I think that's going to be the next one, and I think Rubio will pursue that.
Let me ask you about the State Department, because there's a big push now, and Rubio said he would streamline the State Department, remove some of the focus on Africa, and really try to, just make it more efficient and to bring about America's goals, globally. Do you know anything about that? I mean, is that going to work? I mean, because that's one of the worst spots in the U.S. government, right?
Well, the State Department has been anti-American and anti-Judeo-Christian since 1948, when George Marshall was the Secretary of State, and he told Harry Truman not to recognize the newly independent state of Israel. And he said, if you do, I will campaign against you, and everyone in the State Department will do the same. And they've been the same people ever since. So, sorry, I've got a cold here.
Yeah, it's going around. Yeah.
Well, I'm from the tropical further south, so I'm not used to all this stuff. I was in New York for a week. That's why.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What about Steve Witkoff and Rubio? There's kind of a competition there, right? I mean, how do you see
Rubio's competing with everyone. This is what Trump has done. He's got a team of rivals, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Witkoff is a fool. He's a businessman trying to negotiate war and peace. And you're not negotiating to build a new casino in Midtown or whatever. These people, the mullahs, they want to kill us. They want global domination too. And Witkoff doesn't seem to understand that. And I think Trump, who's also a Midtown developer, doesn't understand that. This is not a question of, you give them a concession, you grant them an easement. No, they want to kill us. They want to kill Israel. They want to kill America. They want to continue the military conquest that started in the year 635. And they're doing it in I'm going to France. There are 700 no-go zones in France.
Yeah.
And it's not just me saying that. I confirmed it with a judge. The judges there are civil servants. There's no separation of powers. And I said to him, is this true? And he said he couldn't deny it. So that's where the battle is. London has become Londonistan.
Yeah.
And, Spain has similar problems. Germany has similar problems. Everyone, I thought they're going to become Eurabia before they become a province of China. So it's a big deal.
I tend to think that is. I think that is a way to destroy Western civilization by China. It's a tool to bring all these migrants in here as well, and trying to, I wrote a big article on Easter about that. People can read on CDM. Ed, you can stay one more segment, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, we'll be right back. We're going to take a break. Ed Vidal from the MiamiIndependent.com. We'll be right back.
The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah.
Where you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
So I'm back with Ed Vidal from the Miami Independent. If you haven't seen Ed's work, go to MiamiIndependent.com. He's one of our most thoughtful writers. He puts a lot of effort into this, really interesting subjects from all over. And people also don't know he was instrumental in starting CDMEspanol.com. He introduced us to Willie Laura, who ran CNN Espanol, who built it, and now is working with us on our version of that for the Latin audience. Speaking of the Latin audience, Ed, what's going on in Miami right now? There's a housing crisis down there, right? I mean, are housing prices dropping right now?
Well, condominium prices are dropping because the folks that live in them can't afford to pay the assessment to keep do all the maintenance that's required.
Interesting.
My mother lived in one of those until about 15 years ago. She retired from teaching in Chicago, and she moved down to Miami Beach for about 4 or 5 years. And then she had to go back to be near my sister. And the problem was that if she had stayed there, she couldn't afford, these old people, they can afford their monthly maintenance payments maybe, but they can't afford these big assessments. And so what's happening is that a lot of the people are selling at a loss, and then developers are buying them up. And I think some of the developers are planning to tear down these old buildings and build new ones.
Is that on the beach, or where is that?
Yeah, on the beach, Collins Avenue.
Wow.
All up and down, Surfside is just one of them, but it's really all the way up and down. And it's sad, but it's an example of when you can't, you just have to be careful where you go live when you get older. Yeah. And these people are getting cash payments that maybe are not what they expected, but they cannot afford to stay in that neighborhood, so they have to move inland. I think they either move inland or they move to other parts of Florida, because what's happening is Miami-Dade County is becoming very expensive. People are moving down here. They're trying to get away from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Chicago, and so it's just a displacement in some respects of the local.
Well, I read an article on Zero Hedge that the property market, maybe not so much on the beach, but inland Miami, was dropping significantly because that wave after COVID had dropped. Anyway, it's just interesting to watch. But let's talk Florida for a minute. A lot going on there, and the elections are the big one. I mean, we had Gleason and Bongiorno on yesterday. Yeah, to talk about everything that's going on. Florida is a mess. I mean,
people don't know it, but it really is. And right now we're working with Defend Florida, Raj Ramaswamy, to to fight the lobby fight with the legislators, and they have no interest in improving election integrity. Neither DeSantis nor the House Speaker, Senate President, nobody has any interest in that. So we're continuing. Next week, the Election Integrity Brigade here in Miami-Dade County is meeting with our super of elections, and we're going to hold her face to the Trump executive order and tell her, look, you're not following. You say you're a Trumpista. You got endorsed by Trump during your election, and you won on Trump's coattails.
This is in Miami-Dade?
In Miami-Dade. Trump won 55%. All 5 Republican candidates for countywide office won with 55%. It's like, Trump carried them to victory. Fine. But now we're going to hold their feet to the fire and say, you got to comply with what Trump is saying, especially in the area of vote by mail. Trump and his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, have said, we got to limit vote by mail. We got to send it back to absentee voting. And that's something that they are not doing. In fact, the super of elections in Miami-Dade County is sending emails to voters who have previously requested a vote by mail ballot, but who didn't, because you have to request it in every election cycle, and getting them to do it. That's just the opposite. And so that's what we have to do with all these folks.
Well, keep us in the loop on that. Keep us in the loop on that, because we want to highlight that.
I have an article coming next week. We're going to meet with them. I have the article already written, so don't worry. I never go into these meetings without having the article written. But this afternoon, I'm going to a lunch with Byron Donalds. And Byron, when I listen to him on TV, he's always right on the economics. He's always very good on Stuart Barney and Larry Kudlow and Fox Business. But there are a lot of question marks about him. There are a lot of questions that people have, especially about, say, where does he stand on Trayvon Martin and George Floyd? Where does he stand on the stolen election in 2020? Where does he stand on J6ers? Where does he stand on vaccines? So he's got to answer all these questions. And I think a lot of conservatives have question marks about him, even though on economics, he's generally very sound. However, he has gotten the Trump endorsement, which is, I think it's a red herring. I think those endorsements are coming from Susie Wiles. I don't think Trump is fully aware of what's going on, and Susie is running the show. And what's happened now is we have a division among the Republicans, and I call it, rhino versus rhino. It's Ron DeSantis on one side, and people that like the attorney general that he appointed, Udmire, who's his chief of staff. And then on the other side, we have the Senate president, Albritton, the House Speaker, Perez. And they are all going at each other and not really being very productive at all. And I think what happens is DeSantis made a huge mistake last year. He took on Trump, and he coerced the legislators to support him. 90% of Florida legislators supported DeSantis. That was not, I don't think, free choice. Their gun.
It's kind of like Kemp in Georgia. It's a cartel, and they put the hammer down.
But then Trump, at least Kemp didn't shoot at Trump. DeSantis went after Trump. If you shoot at the king, you better hit him. He missed, and now he's kind of left over. He might run Casey in his place. I'm not sure that we want another Evita Peron here in Miami, or Michelle, Cornelia Wallace in Alabama. So we have the rhinos at each other's throats. We'll see which is the least bad, but I don't think we're going to have a real conservative candidate for governor or any of the other positions.
That's too bad, because that cartel has to be broken up, because it's from the top. I had
unfortunately Matt Gaetz, who I thought might be like either run for governor or run for attorney general. He seems to be in the pay of John Morgan, who is the attorney at Morgan and Morgan. He's a big Democrat donor. He knows the Democrat cannot win, so he was talking about a third party. That's baloney. He can do better by just buying out all these Republicans, like the House Speaker, like Matt Gaetz, who's now a broadcaster on One America News. And so we have a real swamp here. And I think it all goes back to the fact that the Florida legislature is very much top down.
Yeah.
The Florida leadership is elected early when they're elected first. And they have the access to all this donor money that goes into the Republican campaign committee, Senate campaign committee, or Republican House campaign committee. So they have all this money, and the leadership interferes in the primaries. They fund their selected candidates against grassroots conservatives, and all too often they win. And so the legislature is just made up of bought and paid for yes men.
Well, the legislature has been implementing these election integrity acts, which are actually election fraud legalization acts.
And so they call them the Trump Act.
Yeah, it's amazing. So the RPOF, I mean, this has been a festering sore that this organization does not work for the people of Florida.
Listen, the chairman of the RPOF is a lobbyist. He's an employee of David Ramba, who owns the consulting firm. And Ramba is the executive director of the Florida Supervisors of Elections Association. So we have a lobbyist who is the boss of the chairman of the RPOF. That's not independence at all. It's totally a bought and paid for organization. In addition, they're suing the Florida Republican Assembly, which is an alternative Republican group. And they're arguing that, in effect, the Florida Republican Party is a private social club, and that they own the name Republican and the name and the symbol elephant. I mean, that's in court up in Jacksonville. The Florida Republican Assembly has, filed a case. But basically, what I would say is, Republican, here's my language, comes from the Latin re public, things which are public, matters which are public. And politics comes from the Greek polis, which was the city-state where they lived. So a Republican political party cannot be a private social club. It's just by its own terms.
Well, it's corporate fascism is what it is, because in Georgia we have the same thing, where the Republican Party does not even exist as a political party in Georgia. They only have Georgia Republican Party Inc., which is against Georgia law. You can't have a corporation take the place of a party and act in those functions. But we've tried to find the paperwork in Georgia. It doesn't exist for the Georgia Republican Party as a political party. I mean, it's amazing that they've gotten away with this stuff.
Well, that's what happens when you have one-party states. Georgia is one. I mean, for example, Texas is having their problems in the House in Texas. The Rhinos and Democrats got together to elect a speaker, and they have hardly done anything. They recently finally approved the School Voucher Act under pressure, but I think it's very important for conservatives to vote in the Republican primaries. A lot of times in these states, the red states, the primary is the right place to make a difference.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to fight.
But you're right. The local parties put their thumb on the scale. I had dinner during the inauguration in D.C. with Perez, who's the House leader in Florida. And all he wanted to do is talk about DeSantis. And you're right. It's like a Gangs of New York fight between these guys.
Yep.
It's amazing. What else, Ed? Anything else happening in Miami or with Rubio you want to get out to the audience?
Well, something that's affecting Miami and the whole Catholic world, and you had a very good article on this, the Pope is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to elect a new Pope. Now, let me tell you, this Pope was a Peronista, a Jesuit, communist preacher of liberation theology. He was a bad guy. He was contra to the West. He violated many Catholic doctrines. And I'm surprised. I used to be Catholic until I went to a Jesuit high school. And I said, forget this. And that's exactly what I got in this Pope. He is an old-fashioned Jesuit. He fell for the liberation theology, which was introduced in Latin America in 1968 by the Russian KGB. They knew they could sucker these all these priests, and they did. And so Latin America, the Catholic Church is very leftist, and that's why there's been a big growth of evangelical Protestantism in Latin America and also in South Florida, because people are fed up with this communist Pope. Now, the question is, who's going to be the new Pope? And I'm hoping there's some cardinals, for example, Cardinals for Africa. Robert Serra is one of them. They're very conservative. They're on the front lines against jihad. They know what's going on. But then there's this other guy, Cardinal I looked up, Cardinal Parolin from Italy. He's been the Secretary of State for Pope Francis. He went to China and he completely sold out the Chinese Communist Church. I'm sorry, the Chinese Catholic Church. Completely. Cardinal Zen of Hong Kong, I think, Sin, S-I-N, he said Pope Francis is so soft on the communists in China because he knew the communists from when he was in Argentina and they were fighting against the oligarchy. But he doesn't realize that once they take power, they oppress Christians. And so
I think they realize. I don't think the dude was a Christian.
I agree. I think they're making excuses. I was told this by a Roman Catholic priest who's a libertarian, Robert Sirico of the Acton Institute. So he and I agree on most things, but not on this. But I think it's going to be really important because Europe is at a crossroad, and France is at a crossroad. All the other countries. And I think if they get it wrong, I think there could be a schism in the Roman Catholic Church. I think there are some bishops and cardinals that are willing to step out and have another schism. They've had schisms before. I think there could very easily be a schism between the confessing church and the progressive church if they pick the wrong pope.
That's interesting. We'll stay on that theme because, it's happening in Ukraine and in the Orthodox world. There already is a schism going on. And the youth are searching. I was talking to a young lady the other day, and she converted to Catholicism because she was in one of the main Protestant churches, and she just found this place, and she felt like it spoke to her at the local level, which I said, fantastic. But the people are looking for, something, and the Africans know the Christian persecution. I mean, they see it daily. So that's another theme. We're talking about themes today: Christian persecution, and Savior, and the saving of the not the religion, but the Word of God, if you will. I mean, people are searching for truth. They don't really care where they go; they just want to find it.
The Greek Orthodox Church has actually been attracting a lot of people, so I think that you'll see more of that in the U.S. But in the U.S., the evangelical churches are full. There's a church here, Boo Church, and they have like 4,000 or 5,000. And when we go there, everyone's like very young. So I think there's a real thirst for that.
Ed, thank you so much. Always insightful. And please check out Ed's work on MiamiIndependent.com. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, ready?
Ready. So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a Milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an ALK. Someone else was using a tobacco product, and then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALK, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical fur, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20. And we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen aircraft. Yes! So, I should say, alppouch.com, for sale now, alppouch.com, usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches, the American Lip Pillow, on sale now.
Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Some of the themes we're talking about, we talked about Europe moving in bed with China. They've been there for a while. It was just under the covers. Now they're taking the mask off and joining China against the U.S. as far as tariffs are concerned, instead of working with the Trump agenda, because they're essentially vassal states. The next thing I want to talk about is the peace plan that could be coming up. The New York Post released an article earlier today, the Ukraine ceasefire deal to be revealed this week. This is on cdm.press. We're not sure if this is real or a narrative trying to achieve a certain end, but they talk about European troops being deployed inside Ukraine with not American involvement, but not American boots on the ground. And they talk about territory being given to Russia, which includes Donbass and likely Crimea, obviously Crimea, and maybe other areas like Kherson, etc. We're not sure. But they mentioned 20% of the territory being given to Russia. But the way it's recognized is an issue. Ukraine doesn't want to say that it was given, that it was theirs beforehand. They want it to be, on the record, if you will, that Russia took it. So we'll see if this is real, if this deal will be revealed. But Trump did say last week that he hoped this week that a peace deal would be revealed. So we're hopeful for that. The killing needs to stop. The vampire ball needs to stop. It needs to end. And we want the killing to stop. We know a lot of Ukrainians, and it's been devastating to their country. And by the way, we're going to stay on this theme. We're going to have, I guess, tomorrow or maybe the next day, depending on his power situation, Pete Blaber to come back on and talk about some of the blob narrative that's been out there with a lot of these retired generals and active duty generals talking about keeping the war going. And it's our mission here at CDM to stop the war. We've been on this literally since 2014. I wrote my first article on this in 2014, 10 years ago, that this was not our fight. It would be a waste of money and resources and would lead to a much bigger conflict and wouldn't help Ukraine. And that's exactly what's happened. We have not helped the people of Ukraine. They are depopulated. So I'm going to put out something later today about exactly the agenda that's going on in Ukraine. And it's not the freedom and health of Ukrainians, because they could care less. They've killed millions of them, millions of Russians, maimed and wounded on both sides. And the agenda is something other than the people of Ukraine. So if somebody says, I stand with Ukraine, you mean you stand with oligarch warmongers who want to, who don't care about destroying generations of people in order to get what they want on this earth. So we're going to stay on that story. We talked about the EU. The next one is really fascinating. This disclosure came from Senator Johnson yesterday, and that he said, he played that video. Let me play this video once again. I have to find it here. Hold on one second. Here we go. I want you to hear this again if you didn't hear it.
And I know that we're up against a hard out. Just one final question, since you brought it up. What would you like to know about September 11th, the official story there, Senator?
Well, start with Building 7. Again, I don't know that you can find structural engineers other than the ones that have the corrupt investigation inside NIST that would say that that thing didn't come down in any other way than a controlled demolition. I mean, you just look at that. You talk about molten steel. Again, you listen to the documentary Bravo 7. There's an awful lot of questions. You know, who ordered the removal and then destruction of all that evidence? Totally contrary to any other firefighting investigation procedures. I mean, who ordered that? Who was in charge? I think there's some basic information. Where's all the documentation from the NIST investigation? No, there are a host of questions that I want, and I will be asking, quite honestly, now that my eyes have been opened up. I've talked to former Congressman Kurt Weldon now. I will work with him to expose what he's willing to expose as well.
Wow. So we may actually see hearings about this.
I think so. And by the way, this was opened up when my ranking member now, when he was chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee Investigation, he did the investigation on the PGA and Live Golf and the PIF. Part of that is we had 9/11 families coming forward and saying, we want the FBI files unredacted. We want those made available in terms of what happened. What did the FBI know what happened? So we got engaged with that on a bipartisan basis. We want to get those answers, those documents for the families. Again, we didn't get squat from the FBI. So hopefully now with this administration, I think President Trump should have some interest being a New Yorker from himself. What actually happened in 9/11? What do we know? What is being covered up? My guess is there's an awful lot being covered up in terms of what the American government knows about 9/11.
Wow, including who let the hijackers into the country, which was John Brennan, station chief in Doha. Why would he do that? And why would you let him take flight lessons? There's so many things that don't make absolutely no sense at all when you actually look at the government's own documentation. This is from Guantanamo Bay. And then to your last point, and then let's please put up the senator's X account here. Everybody follow Ron Johnson. This is bombshell stuff. But yeah, President Trump on the morning of September 11th saying there's no way that those buildings came down by themselves. They're the strongest buildings in all of New York. There's no way they came down that way. This is President Trump's own words. And it matches the words of the firefighters who were in the building, many of them who've perished. So we owe them, at the very least, these guys gave their lives. We owe them the chance to get absolution here.
So absolutely fascinating, guys, that a sitting senator of the United States is coming out and questioning the narrative of 9/11. Think about what this changes if this disclosure continues, which I believe it will. I think we're just starting a long process. They can't come out and say all the stuff that's happened in the last 20 years, 30 years, actually going back even to World War II. Pearl Harbor, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Iraq War. All of it was not what we were told, in my opinion, and in others' opinion. And this disclosure process is gonna really rock the country, and it's gonna cause people to really question who they are, what they believe in. And somebody told me the other day, we don't need more patriotic Americans. We need more believers. And I think we're gonna get to the point where it's going to come down to good and evil and what you choose, and we have to rebuild a new society. I look at this as a chance to rebuild our society, rebuild a future for our children. We have to rip the Band-Aid, rip the mask off, all this nefarious behavior, get it out in the open, and then we can have a real discussion about where we want the republic to go. I think what our founders set up was incredibly beautiful, and we need to get back to that. In reality, and not the fake democracy that we have now. So we're going to continue that process here at CDM. It's one of our main missions. Hold on. I'm just can ask this guy if he's coming on, Kurt Brackob. So there we go. Thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Dan Caldwell. Dan was on Tucker recently, and just fascinating. I'll bring this up. If if you go to armedforces.press, the interview with Dan Caldwell is there. It's also on, actually, the interview's on CDM.press. This story's on armedforces.press. And I want to play a little bit of the interview with Tucker and let you hear what Dan had to say. So I'm going to do this, and we will play this, and then we'll be right back and discuss it.
I'm not involved at all. I'm just watching, but it seems like the fastest way to derail the whole project, the Trump administration, United States of America, is a war with Iran. And that's why I've just been watching it as carefully as I can, because I feel like, again, if you hated Donald Trump and you hated what the administration is doing on immigration, trade, anti-wokeness, whatever, and you wanted to stop it, the first thing you would do is apply pressure to have the U.S. military engage in a war with Iran. I mean, that's my perspective on it anyway.
I would think that, and also continuing to do what we've been doing previously in Russia, Ukraine.
For sure. Though I don't know why. I'm going to ask you all about this, but it feels like Witkoff is helping a lot there. God bless.
I mean, I've already said he's a godsend.
God bless Steve Witkoff. I couldn't agree more. As a man and as an instrument of peace and a figure now out of history. Okay, so you did make, just from an outsider's perspective, one maybe career mistake by giving on-the-record interviews before you went in, describing your foreign policy views, which I think are fully within the mainstream of the world in the U.S., but out of the mainstream among warmongers in Washington. So like there were people knew that you weren't fully on board with the regime change program. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was very open about it. I was very on the record about it. And most of the time when I was saying that we shouldn't do this, it was actually in support of, the president's stated preferences. Like the president clearly doesn't want this. In the first term, there were people in his administration that wanted it. He clearly didn't want it. And so it was supporting people who didn't want the war. And so I was essentially...
But Donald Trump has said, and now his actions make perfectly clear, he would strongly prefer a diplomatic solution.
Correct. I don't want to speak for the president, but it's fairly obvious that that's what he wants.
Well, he said it. I mean, He said it again, and he ran on it. So it's not a crazy position. And now things are getting so bonkers in this country that saying that makes you a bigot or something, a Nazi. It's like, I'm just going to ignore all that. And I just want to get back to your experience. So I'm just watching this from the outside, and I'm thinking, having spent my life in DC, I was like, Dan Caldwell's got a target on his back that I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah.
And then I read all of a sudden that you're a traitor. You're like marched out of the Pentagon for leaking, right? And then the whispering campaign, the character assassination campaign begins, and here's its outline. I don't want to upset you. You may not even be aware of this. Dan Caldwell leaked classified information to liberal media outlets, to the media, to NBC News, for example. So I just want to be totally direct with you. Did you leak classified information against the wishes of your superiors to media outlets?
Absolutely not.
Did you photograph classified material and then text pictures of that material to an NBC News reporter?
Absolutely not. And I have not spoken to an NBC reporter while at the Pentagon.
Do you know what you've been accused of?
No, I don't. Sitting here right now, myself and Darren Selnick and Colin Carroll, the other two individuals that were escorted out of the Pentagon, initially placed on leave and then fired on Friday, we have not been told as of this recording. One, is there what we were being investigated for? Two, is there still an investigation? And three, was there even a real investigation? Because there's a lot of evidence that there is not a real investigation. But again, sitting here right now, there are a lot of unknowns about this. As a former Secretary of Defense would say, there's a lot of unknown unknowns. There are some things that are pretty clear, but we have no idea what specifically being investigated.
So we can know some things just by the details. So here are a couple. Have you been polygraphed?
No, I've never been hooked up to a polygraph machine since I've been in the Department of Defense.
Okay. Have you given up your private communications devices, your private phone, your phone?
No.
to anybody?
No.
Okay. So that raises the obvious question. I'm trying not to use the F word here because the lying is just driving me insane. You're being accused of leaking classified information, but the people accusing you would have no way of knowing whether you did that or not because they haven't polygraphed you or taken your devices, your private devices, correct?
I mean, there are.
You can't even make the allegation because there's no conceivable way you can prove that.
Let me just say, there are so many different things that would prevent me from doing the things that you've laid out. And again, I don't even know if that's what I'm really being investigated for. Again, if there's a real investigation, but all these, the point is so what I have told some people who have asked me about what's going on is I would repeat something that I heard in the Marine Corps in our work up to Iraq. I believe it was in something called a combat hunter course, which isn't what it sounds like. It's actually about observing things better. And I remember an instructor very clearly saying, when you're in this environment, believe nothing of what you hear and only half of what you see.
So I found that fascinating, and we need to stay on this story and figure out what's happening to Dan Caldwell and exactly why he's being booted out. And Tucker goes on to say it's essentially because he was opposing the war in Iran. So again, one of our big subjects, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. We're going to have Kurt Brackob here right after the break, and we're going to talk about Europe in a big way. We'll be right back.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. The stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is Alp World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the Alp. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. Let's throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker, stealing all the applicants.
Welcome back to the SCIF. 2 things. David Cross is our resident financial advisor. I was told when I got on the street back in 1994, you need to talk to people who've been through some bear markets. David is your guy. Give him a call at US Asset Management, us-am.com, and he'll just have a conversation. He's not a sales guy. I know him well, and we can highly recommend him. Number 2, the Wellness Company. Support us there. They have been one of our best sponsors, and they've got some fantastic equipment. This is the emergency medical kit, the contagion kit. It's got a nebulizer in here. It's got the steroids. So with all these supply chain issues coming, make sure your family's protected in case the new pandemic comes. And look at everything else. They're putting out so many products now, from parasite removal to supplements, all these memberships of ways. They're reimagining healthcare. And just go to their website, twc.health/CDM, poke around, use CDM promo code for 10% off, and learn what they have, because it's really good stuff. I'm going to bring in Kurt Brackob now, my good friend and colleague, partner in crime. Kurt, how you doing?
All right. How are you? Good to see you.
All right. I think I last saw you at CPAC. But so one of the things we're focusing on here at CDM is the EU. And my sense is it's collapsing. What say you? I mean, from a 30,000-foot level, what do you think?
Well, the European Union is definitely in a serious crisis right now. And the question is, whether it is going to collapse in the end. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
You see what's going, with the situation with Serbia, for example, which is moving more and more toward the Russian sphere of influence.
Can you give us an overview of that? Just the, elevator pitch of what's happening, because people may not be aware.
Well, basically, the impression that, at least from the Serbian point of view, what they're understanding is that the EU is basically, and possibly with U.S. help as always, trying to undertake a color revolution in the country to overthrow the government, and they're reacting against that, obviously. And where else are they to turn except for their traditional historic ally, which has been Russia. So you now see that despite the EU has forbidden any European Union or European leaders from attending the Victory Day parade in Moscow on May 9th, and Vučić has said he's going, and Fico has said he's going, and Slovakia as well, which is another sign of weakening in the whole EU. You see that the EU, especially in the East, is crumbling. There's no doubt about it. You have the situation in Romania where they're desperately trying to hold on to power just by completely subverting democracy.
Well, even the Trump administration got involved there recently and said, we're not, I forget exactly the trade-off, but they basically said, we're not going to do something if you continue to subvert democracy. Did you see that?
They cut off visa waivers for.
That's what it was.
Romania. Yeah, they were going to. Romania was scheduled to be part of the visa waiver program, which basically means that Romanian citizens could come to the U.S. without getting a visa, which has never been the case. So now they were scheduled for that in March, but with everything that happened, starting in December, and even now with this upcoming election, which is, kind of a joke the way it's been handled right now. The U.S. has stepped in, and Marco Rubio said that Romania is not going to be in the visa waiver program anytime soon, because people that don't respect our values are not welcome.
Right.
And that's, unfortunately, it's not the Romanian people that don't respect our values. It is the Romanian government and the globalists which control it, which are essentially puppets of Brussels and nothing more. And actually, allies of the U.S. Democrat Party, because Romania is one country that's gone 100% in with the U.S. Democrat Party, and they bought in hook, line, and sinker to that. And until that regime is overthrown or voted out, whichever will have to happen, but something's going to have to happen. Romania, things are really bleak over there. Then you have, the situation.
Let me ask you a question there. Sorry to jump in, but the Black Sea and the naval, or the base that the U.S. is building in Romania is really important. That's like the Blob effort to confront Russia if Ukraine falls, right?
No, absolutely.
So that's something that people need to be aware of.
Well, that and if they are going to send troops into Ukraine at some point, they need Romania as a staging area to get them into into Ukraine, which has been the other thing. And the opposition candidates, the candidate that was overwhelmingly going to win, every poll showed it, and that's why they took him out, was Călin Georgescu, who's been a lot featured on some of the American media recently and things. And right now, the candidate that is representing his position basically is Giorgia Simeone, who we've interviewed before on CDM, and who really is the leader of the only opposition party in Romania right now that has any any popular base.
Right.
So it's a tricky situation, and we're going to see what happens at the beginning of May. But they've gone so far now as to ban they take down any social media post that supports any candidate that is against globalist interests. I mean, there's no democracy in Romania. It is a complete joke right now.
So my sense is that this whole thing in Europe is globalism and Maoism, essentially from China, kind of working hand in hand to make them vassals of that agenda. That's what I see, because you're right. There is no democracy. It's all lip service, right?
100%. And what you see going on, though, is something else that's quite interesting. In the in several of these Eastern countries where the EU realizes its position is very weak because they haven't been able to infiltrate culturally the way they have in the West. You see now a lot of the globalist puppets sort of reorientating themselves to try to take on a more populist, sovereigntist message.
Really?
In order to try to win elections. You have Donald Tusk, who's a notorious globalist puppet in Poland, who is now, calling for the Polonization of the economy, trying to mimic sort of a MAGA theme because of the upcoming presidential election. And that this is all being done just to try to win an election, and that they're going to, as soon as if they manage to win, they're just going to install the Brussels.
Of course they are. I was in Warsaw a year and a half ago, and I remember right before Tusk came in, I remember this very clearly. We were I got invited to an event. It was kind of a globalist event, but I went anyway, and I asked some questions which really pissed them off. But what they were doing is talking about this great, agenda that was coming with Tusk. And I said, you see all these safe streets, this homogenous society, this wealth, this prosperity, you see, this is all going to be gone. And I was telling this to these young kids, and they were, oh no, that's a conspiracy theory. I'm like, I mean, how do you get through the propaganda in Europe? I guess you don't. You just let them, what can we do on our end besides writing a lot of books, history of books?
Well, I mean, our role is just to try to make known what's going on over there, and do what we can to support, the efforts of those who are, trying to pursue a sovereigntist, more populist agenda over there. And that's because obviously, I mean, the mainstream media everywhere in Europe and the United States, completely buys into the globalist agenda and is still pushing it. But you have the same situation that, I was just talking about in Poland. You have that going on in Hungary too, where they've created this opposition party, which, claims to be center right because it's trying to mimic, some of the more popular policies of Orban, but is essentially, a puppet party of the globalist agenda. And what's happening there is that you have, even though, Trump has come into office here and he's tried to, said, well, we're going to, stop supporting things like Radio Free Europe and all of these things, we still are. Our money's still going there and we're still pushing it. And what is Radio Free Europe doing? It's completely undermining Orban and attacking him at every.
Is it really? Even under Kerry Lake, huh?
Even under Kerry Lake, it hasn't made a difference in there.
Wow.
Hungary just passed a constitutional amendment to, to stop LGBT propaganda, in schools and in public displays, and things like that. And of course, it's attacked, by these outlets, which, is sad. And I don't think it's Kerry Lake who's making that decision, obviously, but I think that they can't control it. They're
well, we should report on that.
To control it. Yeah.
We should bring some more light on that. Actually, I'm going to make a note. So can you stay for one more segment?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, "You use Alp?" "Yeah, I do," says my friend. "So do I," says the cop. "We all do." He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, "Drive safely, sir," and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine patch.
So for all you Zen users out there, please check out the Alp Pouch, alppouch.com/CDM. Don't support the woke company. It's really bad. You go to Philip Morris's website, complete DEI, everything there. So if you're looking for some nicotine pouches, go to alppouch.com/CDM. What about Hungary, Kurt? I mean, you mentioned that they're going after Orban, but they're also saying they're going to remove their voting rights. Have you looked into that?
Oh yeah, they're trying to take action to remove their voting rights because Hungary is opposing, aid more money to the war in Ukraine, and undermining their agenda. They're refusing to extend the sanctions on Russia, which is absolutely their right under the EU charter to do that. So, Brussels is trying to invent ways to punish Hungary and take away not just their voting rights, but also funding that is owed to them through the EU agreements and everything that's going on. And what they're trying to do essentially is to create a crisis in Hungary and to influence. It's a political move. I mean, to try to get in this so-called opposition party into power so that they have a compliant state. And the leader of that party, this Peter Tisza, has already said, well, he's going to restore, Hungary's going to be a good European, member, ally, partner, which basically means he's going to completely comply and become subservient to the globalist agenda that's going on. So, and unfortunately, as I said, we're supporting this through our government-funded media, where we're not helping Orban at all. We are actually doing the opposite, which is just shocking because, Orban has been, probably Trump's most reliable and strongest ally in all of Europe over, his first term and second. I mean,
so where are you getting that from? Did you hear some of the advertisements, or do you have people telling you, or because I want to put something out on this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I mean, also just reading the news. I mean, that they're publishing on there. You're seeing it on,
on the NPR site, or not NPR, the Voice of America,
RFE, Radio for Europe, site. You see what they're putting out as news stories there.
Interesting. Okay.
There's just no support for Orban in any of that. It's always portraying Hungary in a negative light. That there's an attack on civil liberties in Hungary because Hungary wants to preserve its culture and tradition by not supporting, not giving into the whole LGBT agenda, which should be the right of every country to pursue its own culture and history. But no, the globalist agenda is to make every country the same. And this is why they pursue policies of mass immigration, because those policies are intended to really destroy the cultural fabric of any, whatever country they're pushing this in. And Hungary has been resistant to that as well, which is why, they're the black sheep of the EU. So, to speak.
Wow. What about you spent a lot of time in the UK? This thing with Starmer, I mean, kissing some guy in the doorway, and did you think that's a deep fake, or have you heard anything about that? Do you know about that story?
I honestly don't know anything about that. I mean,
I was going to show it, but I
very unpopular. I can tell you that. I mean, Starmer It's very unpopular over there because he's a minority ruler essentially. Just the way the British system works, he's got at most 30% support, and that's probably declined significantly because of how bad the economic situation is becoming over there. But I mean, he has a majority in Parliament because of the way the EU is structured.
What last question before we get to off Europe, and I want to talk about the books, but Ukraine, you were one of the earliest ones to talk about the hit list in Ukraine. I forget the name of Morovitz or whatever it is. Where assassination list, and several people have been killed on that list. What do you think is going to happen in the Ukraine conflict?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say because you have so much in the United States. You still have, even within the Trump administration, you have a lot of pro-war people that want to support Ukraine and see their mission as this crusade against Russia, which is just a totally mistaken policy. You have others, of course, who are against that and trying to bring an end to the war. You have Zelensky, who's doing everything he can to subvert any peace effort whatsoever. He's on a constant propaganda mission and doing everything he can to continue the war because he knows that his survival depends on the war.
Yeah,
he's the last person that wants peace under any.
But it's bigger than that. It's the globalist survival in Ukraine depends on him being in power, which depends on him not holding an election. So they just dropped it for 3 more months. I mean, they're going to continue that charade, right? We're in a war. That's why they don't want peace, because then they lose power if they have an election. I think
100%. That's one reason. I mean, there's many. Obviously, it's a very complex situation, but if the U.S. turns off the spigot, though, and Russia steps up, its military actions, Ukraine will eventually fall if it has to. I mean, the one thing about fighting a war with Russia, and that's proven historically over centuries, is that they will outlast you.
Yeah. They have the depth of geography, of population, of time. I mean, and people don't understand, you don't have to support Putin, but you have to understand what their view of the world is and how they react. And anyone who's a student of Russian history knows that suffering is an art form. Once you make the fight about the state itself, then all other internal divisions go away. And that's what Ukraine has done by trying to invade through the Kursk region, which was right there, the biggest tank battle of World War II against Nazi Germany. I mean, just incredible. I don't know if it was stupidity or intentional, whatever it is. It's really incredible to watch.
Well, I mean, Ukraine already had a Nazi problem, and they just aggravated it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's still flaming for sure. I know that for sure. Let's talk about the books. You're first. I want to say you're the editor-in-chief of the Balkan.press. Let me bring that up real quick. And the Balkans is one of the areas we've been on for a long time, and luckily ran into you. You're from Romania. You know the area extremely well, and you put out a lot of, if you want the news about the region without the globalist spin, go to the Balkan.press. But you're also the CEO and founder of History of Books, and we have a joint venture with you, Vindicta Publishing, and there's just really some cool books in there. If you just scroll through, what's some of your recent releases, and I'll bring those up.
Well, some of the more recent releases in the Vindicta line, of course, we have coming out very shortly. Actually, we have the Still Psyched Out, which is all about the the use of drugs, pushing these drugs on children, and how that is leading to things like these school shootings that we hear about and things like that. It's a very important book. It came out originally, a first edition of this book came out about 20 years ago, and the author, who's a very well-known investigative journalist, has revised it, updated it, to include a lot of the recent happenings, because this problem, instead of becoming improving over the years, has gotten worse. As it just continues to get worse, and we have several other books coming out soon, and along with your novels. Of course, Currency is already out, but we have
Right.
The others in the Connor Murray series coming out in the coming months.
Yes, and that is I want to just bring that up. If people want a gift for that person who has everything, this book is that. I mean, the reviews are off the charts. There's 500 and something now on Amazon. I think it's an average 4.5 stars. I mean, and it's the first in the Connor Murray series, in Sugar and Motherland, and then a separate novel Delta will be out in the near future. But if you like history and you want to get a degree in finance and not really realize it, but love the reading and the flow of the book, then this is for you. And also, I just wanted to highlight the MEK book on, we're going to talk about Iran, but Paying the Price, The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance is a way to take down the regime without a war, which is really, really important. What else? Any other you want to highlight while we're on this, Kurt?
We've got coming out, let's see, what else, if you want to scroll up there, down there for me a little bit and see. So we've got, we're hoping that we'll have The Dissident coming out early next year, which is a very important book. I know you've been working closely with Evi Kokolari on that.
That's about Albanian communism, the real story. Yeah.
But not just about, Albanian communism in a way. It's really about communism, period, totalitarian society. I mean, Albania is certainly a case study.
It was one of the worst. Yeah.
But it certainly was among the worst. And so that's an important one. And we have, apart from our Vindicta line here, we have, books for the whole family. I mean, we have 12 different imprints. We have a very good Christian imprint, History of Christian, which isn't on that is being updated there. But the book, though, is there. It's called, Letters to God from a Former Atheist by Jason Hill.
We interviewed Jason recently.
Yes, you did. And he's been getting a lot of media coverage all across the country in many different platforms. This book has been doing excellent. Jason is really a well-known and well-respected academic, and as well as, a voice and
it's essentially a story of an atheist who went back to his roots and found God, and the way that happened. And it ties into a lot of the stuff circulating society right now. A lot of the sexual stuff and everything, and the history there is interesting, to say the least. And how he came back to his faith and how he lives it day to day now is really interesting.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything else, Kurt, before we move on?
So a lot of good books there, and please visit historyofbooks.com and check those out. And it's always good to be here and to join you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. We'll see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
My friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually, I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this, but that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have foot, slog, 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 slogging over Africa. Foot, 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 slogging over Africa. Boot, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Really appreciate you joining us today. Our mission here at CDM and on this show specifically, this show is a primer, or CDM.press is feeds this show. I mean, all the information you get off CDM flows into the show. We really have people on the ground all over the world. We're different. We are wire service. We have reporters in Russia, in Ukraine, in Israel, in the Middle East, in Asia, all across the United States, down at the local level where we have papers in different jurisdictions, in the military, Hispanic, in Central America. So we are real. We're a wire service. We're an alternative, not the alternative. We're, I think, the only organization that's doing what we're doing, trying to be, and not even trying, we are a global media company, bringing you news, and we'll get bigger and bigger and more stories. You know, we're putting out close, around 20 a day right now. All of it is really insightful. Most of it is unique. Not all of it. Some of the stories are repetitious of others that we think people need to know about. But we are a wire service, and we're on podcast for this show. All of our shows. We have a lot of different shows we put out. Check that out at CDTV on CDM.press. We're on podcasts. We're on Gettr, X, Rumble, YouTube. If you're a YouTube fan, go there. We have to dice up the show and put it on YouTube after the show's over, because if you say anything about vaccines, they'll kick you off. And we're trying to stay on because we got kicked off years ago. So we're growing that again. So if you're a YouTube fan, please subscribe there. Find us on YouTube, CDM. And the big story that I want people to go away with today is this story about Iran. And we showed Dan Caldwell there, and he's definitely, I believe, was fired, and is what Tucker was intimating, that he was fired because of his opposition to a war with Iran. We don't need another big Middle Eastern war. And I brought it up before. I'll bring it up again. There's an alternatives. The resistance in Iran is alive and well, and it's massive. And they can take the mullahs down from the inside with U.S. support instead of U.S. opposition. The U.S. government has been against this group for decades. Why? I don't know. Maybe because of Iranian influence in the U.S. government. We'll see. And then the other story I wanted to bring up is Boston. I've got family members who lived in Boston. It still is very wealthy, great city, but it's very woke and very tied to the educational establishment, very tied to IT and to biotech. And so that influence drives everything there, and it's going away. All these monetary influences are reducing because of the Trump administration. So the NGOs are going away. It's a big NGO town, right? And all this funding for these NGOs, which was essentially borrowed money off your back and your children's back, is going away. We're going to stay on this story because it has a broad implications, because Massachusetts is the backbone of all the woke stuff out there. So it's something we really want to talk about. I'm being told there's no sound by some people, so we're just going to end the show here, and we'll rerun this tomorrow or the next day. Not sure why there's no sound off this, but I don't have time to figure it out on the fly here. So we'll be back, and tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. Thanks for joining us.
We recommend you take this.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Sorry about all the...